We're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say, you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
All right. Welcome to another edition of Bucknell Men's Swimming Through the Decades. Today we have a special group of Bucknell alums, the real pioneers of the Bucknell swimming and diving program. We have a handful that will join head coach Dan Schinnerer and one of our current student athletes, Kevin Flynn. Kevin is a senior backstroker from New Jersey, and we're happy to have him on today's session. Today we have gentlemen from the 50s as well as the 60s, and it's a fantastic group. I want to thank Geisinger as our sponsor for today's session. Geisinger has done a great job throughout the pandemic, and as always, they do a fantastic job with our student athletes day in and day out here at Bucknell. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest, and then I'll turn it over to Coach Schinnerer. Our first guest from the class of 1959 is Stu Berylson. Stu is a member of the first varsity team in 1956-57. He was Bucknell's top finisher and third overall in the 200 back during the school's first ever meet against F&M. Our next guest, also from the class of 59, is Bob Buys, who also is a Bucknell parent, has a child that graduated in 1984 from Bucknell. He was the team captain during the 1958-59 season. Bob captured the 200 back in 14 of the 19 dual meets he competed in. Next guest from the class of 1960 is Bob Erdahl. Bob was the team captain during the 60 season. He finished first or second in the 200 fly in 16 of the 20 dual meets he competed in while at Bucknell. Our next guest from the class of 1962 is Bill Deerstein. Bill was the team captain during the 60-61 and 61-62 seasons. He was a six-time Middle Atlantic Conference individual champion, capturing both the 100 and 200 back for 3 consecutive years. He also won 2 gold medals as part of the 400 medley relay units in 1960 and 1962. He won the 100 back at the 1960 Eastern Seaboard Championship. He won the Edward W. Pangburn Award at the Athletic Department Senior Awards Banquet, and Bill was inducted into the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 1982. Our next guest from the class of 1965 is Jim Smitty. Jim was the team captain during the 64-65 season. He was a 7-time Middle Atlantic Conference individual champion, winning both the 100 and 200 fly for 3 consecutive years, while also capturing the 200 IM as a senior. He also won 3 gold medals as part of winning relay units. Jim was a college division All-American in both the 100 and 200 fly in 1964 as part of the 400 medley relay. He was a college division All-American in the 200 fly in 1965, as well as the 400 medley relay. Jim won the Deerstein Door Award as the team's MVP in 1965, and he won the Christy Mathewson Award at the Athletic Department Senior Awards Banquet. Jim was inducted into the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 1980. Our next guest from the class of 1966 is Jerry Thimme. He was a team captain during the 65-66 season. He was a 5-time Middle Atlantic Conference individual champion, winning the 200 free 3 times and the 500 free twice. He also earned a pair of gold medals as part of winning relay units. He was a college division All-American in the 200, 500, and 1650 freestyle in 1964, as well as part of the 400 free relay. He won the Deerstein Door Award as the team's MVP in 1966, and Jerry was inducted into the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 1990. And our next guest from the class of 1969 is David Landis. David was a team captain during the 67-68 and 68-69 seasons. He won 6 Middle Atlantic Conference gold medals as part of winning relay units, including 4 times in the 400 free relay. He was a college division All-American as part of both the 400 and 800 free relay units in 1968. So Dan, we've got an outstanding group. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Todd, it is a pleasure to have you all here with us today, gentlemen. I really appreciate you all taking time to join us. This has been a wonderful series, not only for all of Bucknell athletics, but certainly for the swimming and diving program. Especially, I know that I and the student athletes that have joined me as we've done this really benefited and enjoyed hearing the stories and the memories and the traditions that kind of bring Bucknell swimming and diving together. And we've learned a lot from that. And it's only appropriate that for the last one of the series that we've recorded, get to go back to where it all began. You know, some of you as part of the first team, certainly the first championship team, and people who literally some of our awards are named after. And so this is a great opportunity. And we're excited to kind of get into those memories and those experiences and look forward to having you share those. But before we do that, would really love for you, each of you, to take a few minutes to just update us on where you're at right now. And what we mean by that is, you know, both geographically where you're at, what's home for you now, as well as giving us a short synopsis of kind of what you did after Bucknell. We got a group with some very distinguished professional careers to go along with very distinguished college athletic careers. So give us a little rundown of what your professional life took you, and then any kind of family or personal updates you would want to share. And so we, as some of you have experienced with the Zooms, we've kind of got all these squares. And so I will call on a person just to kind of give the update, and then we'll kind of work our way through that. We'll start and kind of go through, I guess, seniority, if you will, at least. And we'll start with Bob Buys, please, and you can give us an update.
Yeah, I'm living in Columbia, South Carolina. I graduated in '59 with a BSE and ended up getting an MBA at University of Maryland a few years later. My career was, and I married a very lovely woman from Bucknell, Ann Smith, who's, I think a couple of you will remember. We've been married for 60 years. We have 3 kids, one of whom graduated from Bucknell, and I have a daughter whose husband also graduated from Bucknell. And 7 grandkids, live in Columbia, South Carolina. Worked for PepsiCo for a number of years and retired from PepsiCo in '96. We have a home up in the North Carolina mountains where we have been, my wife and I, kind of isolating ourselves during this pandemic for the past 8 months. We happen to be back in Columbia right now, but that's a function of doctor's appointments and so forth. I think that's a reasonable background on me.
Thank you for that. And you touch on 2 themes that have come up throughout our calls. One, the number of people that are married to someone they met at Bucknell, Bucknellians that got married, as well as Bucknellians that have sent children there. So that just, again, is a testament to the school itself. I know Stu, it looked like, was having some technical difficulties, but can you hear us, Stu? All right.
Yeah, he's on mute, so we'll just have to take himself off of mute and we should be good to go. Stu, you're on mute. Can you unmute your computer?
Okay.
There you are.
All right. Okay. I'll be brief. I work full time. I live in Greenwich, Connecticut. The team got much better after me. Bill Deerstein was the most amazing swimmer I ever saw. He's still swimming. I'm not doing too much of that, but I do, I am very active. I'm very active in Bucknell, have been for many years, and I try to support as much as I can. The swimming teams have been great. The coaching has been great. And I'm just proud to be there in this group. And I wish everybody good health, and go Bison. 2 of my children did go to Bucknell. I have a grandson at the University of Utah. He didn't want to be in the East. And it's very nice to be with everybody. I thank you, and I'm sorry for my poor computer skills, but somehow I get to work, okay? So everyone be well, support our school, and it's so good. It was great to be back when we had that event. I'll turn it over to the good swimmers. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Stu. Don't sell yourself short. They're an important part of the swimming and diving tradition. And so continuing through our intros, and we'll go to Bob Erdahl next, please.
So, yeah, I'm on unmute now. So, well, I've always enjoyed thinking about my time at Bucknell and the time and friendships that I made on the swimming team. I have had intermittent contact. I remember this wonderful 40-year anniversary event that was organized in 2000. And so it's just a joy to see the familiar faces in this event. And the contact with the pool and the swimming team, I'd like to thank Dan because of his attention to those details and reporting on the various exploits of the swimming team. It makes me very happy to be part of it, really. So I'll give a few details about my own personal life. I graduated in 1960, and then I went to graduate school and well, I was an undergraduate in chemistry, and then I sort of switched to mathematics and physics, and have been a professor at Queen's University in almost due north of Bucknell, of Lewisburg. It's right on the eastern tip of Lake Ontario, in a city called Kingston, which was a very famous city in about 1850. But it is a very small city now. It's a small city like Lewisburg, really, and very friendly city. It's right on Lake Ontario, and it's a center for sailing. It has one of the biggest sailing, competitive sailing harbors in North America, and so people come from all over to these events, and the Olympics, Sailing Olympics was here in 1976. So I have been involved in the water in several ways. And one was on a sailing boat, which is just a wonderful experience. And let's see, I've been a professor. I retired a while ago, but I'm still very active doing research and working with students. I have two daughters that are building their careers in Europe, basically. So I have wonderful places to visit when I visit my daughters. So these experiences that I had at Bucknell are just lovely, and I just love thinking about them. And so I enjoy hearing all these little tidbits about the swimming team. It was a wonderful time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And continuing our progression through the years, Bill Deerstein, you're up next. I don't think I can introduce you any better than Stu did.
Well, Stu is a great promoter. You know, he's a good guy to have on your team. Stu and I had the pleasure of being on the Bucknell Board of Trustees for quite a few years. And it was a wonderful opportunity for not only to get to know Stu better, but perhaps more importantly, to give back to our wonderful university. And I'm very proud of that service and how Bucknell has progressed over the years. We have two daughters, one of whom is a Bucknellian, class of '89. The other one went to Denison. They live respectively in Orange County, California, and in Columbus, Ohio. We live in Bregenz, Austria, which is the westernmost city in Austria. If you can picture where Vienna is, all the way in the east, Bregenz is all the way in the west. On Lake Constance, which borders Germany on the north and Switzerland on the south. So we're pretty much smack in the middle of Europe. I still enjoy swimming in the lake, particularly in the summer before it gets too cold. And I can be found pretty much from June to early September down at the lake to have not as long a swim as I used to have, but not too bad either. And it's brought me many hours of pleasure over the many, many years. I think it would only be appropriate that I give thanks and credit to Bob Latour, who was my coach not only at Bucknell, but also prior to that at the Albany Academy. Those of us who had the opportunity and pleasure to swim for Bob remember him very fondly. He was a real gentleman, and he impacted my life and who I am probably almost as much as my dad did. I still keep in touch with his daughter, Carol, who has also recently retired. She lives in Massachusetts. And Bob's son, Bob Jr., last I heard, was still a professor at, I think, the University of South Carolina. I keep in touch fairly regularly with Charlie Mons, who, for those who remember him, I can report he's just as wacky as he ever was, which makes the contact always amusing. I think that gives you a pretty good update on our life over here, and we're very happy over here. It's different. It's kind of amusing today to be watching the news roundup on the current elections. But I don't think I want to get into that in too much detail. Anyway, thanks, Todd, for organizing this event, and nice to see you and Dan and my swimming colleagues of yesteryear. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And you did a great job setting up what hopefully will be a very fun question and filled with good memories when we get a chance to talk about Bob Latour as we move a little bit further on. But just continuing through kind of the roundup of where people are, we'll go from one Hall of Famer to another in Jim Smiggy.
Hi, thanks for setting all this up, Todd. Appreciate it. Good to see everybody. After graduating at Bucknell, I stayed on in 1966 and got my master's there in business because my wife Catherine was there, and now we've been married. Next June, I think it's 55 years. And I've had two kids, both graduated from Bucknell, one in 93 and one in 95. After leaving, at the time, I didn't have much of a choice, so I ended up going into the Coast Guard. And I was fortunate to have gone through OCS school. Had really interesting experiences there, and ended up as a lieutenant commander before finally cutting ties with it. But it was a tremendous experience. After that, I came back to Richmond and started working for DuPont. And I guess the only significant thing I'm going to say about any of that stuff is that I was back in the summer, and I wasn't able to do too much. So I decided I was going to swim in one of the local pools, a 25-meter pool. And I swam for a month, and I entered the Virginia State Championships. And I won the 200 butterfly with a new record, and I took second in 100. And that was the end of my swimming career. I think it was 1970, 71, somewhere in there. I've had a lot of different jobs, a lot of different places. I've visited 26 countries and lived in a bunch of states, and it's been great. I had to give up swimming because of two shoulder surgeries, and now I'm forced to give up golf because of my back. So I've turned all my attention to photography, which I've done for a number of years now. And I am working as a volunteer down at the Brandywine Zoo, which is the Delaware, and I live in Wilmington, Delaware, the Delaware State Zoo. I'm an event photographer, and I've taken up a new task, which is we have these, I think it's rather interesting, we have these urban wildlife trail cameras spread out, 30 of them throughout the county. And I'm right now responsible for 12. And it's really interesting to know that on my 12 cameras, and between being in a cemetery or in a churchyard or in some park somewhere, every single camera's got a fox, a raccoon, a squirrel, deer. It's just pretty amazing. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, thank you, Jim. Continuing our Hall of Fame progression, it's certainly a distinguished panel. We'll go to Jerry Thimme.
Thank you, and thank you for setting this up. Just going to mention 2 points. One is my wife and I live in Savannah, Georgia. Jane and I met in the 7th grade. We spent a lot of time at Bucknell and married in my senior year. 3 boys, 5 grandkids, everybody thankfully in very good health and shape. One of them, Drew, graduated from Bucknell in 1997. So fond memories. Always enjoyed when one of my kids or grandkids were going to the Hall of Fame, and think that I was a lot bigger deal than I certainly was. And just a sort of a comment that Stu made, I always felt like those of us that came later stood on the shoulders of those that were before us. Bill Deerstein, Jim Smiggy were serious mentors to me, and I have enormous respect for them. Bill mentioned Bob Latour. Bob, like with Bill, was a father figure to me and kept in touch with me through his whole life. And I attended his service when he passed away, and he's only part of many memories that I have of Bucknell and Bucknell swimming. Swimming itself, there are 2 memories that stick out. One, and Jim will remember this, when we won, I keep saying this, I don't know if it's still true, but we were on the only NCAA championship team at Bucknell University. Nobody will remember whether it's true or not, so I'm going to keep repeating it. But that and that has great memories in itself. But to me, sort of the classic swimming memory I have goes back to a meet with Pittsburgh. And I'm not sure what year it was, sophomore or junior year. Jim will probably remember it. I had just swum the 200 and the 500 and the 500 an event before. So I swam the anchor relay. When we went off, we were behind, if my memory serves correctly, and boy, it doesn't at a lot of times, but I think we were behind 47 to 43. I think you got 5 points for the relay, could have been 7. In any case, we needed to win the meet. And I have great memories of my final leg, although a couple of people on that relay will point out that I was not the fastest guy on that relay, but nonetheless, when I took off in 4th place, I was behind, touched ahead of the Pittsburgh swimmer, and it was in my mind sort of a landmark moment in Bucknell swimming, because we took on a much bigger program and beat them. But that sort of goes back to the point I made before. Every class that went before us did extraordinary things, and when we came, we really just built on that. As Dan is coaching swimmers now that are not only a lot better athletes, but also a lot better swimmers. But those are fond memories I have. I still swim every day, as I mentioned. I swam masters into my 50s until work sort of overwhelmed me. I got run over by a merger, as I point out. But in any case, I have very fond memories of Bucknell and the people that I interacted with. Somebody mentioned the 40th swimming celebration. That was a great event. Reconnected with so many people. People remembered stuff about Bucknell that I had forgotten or hadn't noticed, and it was again a great moment. So I'll just leave it there. I could spend a lot of time on other stuff that's more important, less important, but my family and swimming, two things that are really important to mention. So thank you.
Thank you. And we'll definitely have a chance to hopefully share a few more memories as we go along. Rounding out our panel, Dave.
Thank you, Dan and Todd. Thanks for putting this together. So I've got one kudo that maybe I can add to Bucknell swimming. I'll come back to that in a second. I just competed in a meet a year ago as part of Team USA, and I'll come back because I'm still doing masters at the moment. I live in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And at the moment I'm in San Diego. When this call's done, I'm going to go to a master's workout at an outdoor pool, 50-meter pool, 20 lanes across, just like Todd's experiencing. I've been in Jackson for 15 years, mostly skiing and hiking and fishing and doing all kinds of fun things. My son lives there in Jackson. My wife and I moved there from Seattle. I was doing investment banking for a number of years in Seattle. Ended up building a house in Jackson and staying there. Unfortunately, she passed away in a ski race some years ago, and but I've stayed there. So I've kind of continued swimming, and a year ago I was part of Team USA in England, competing in an event that you may not have heard of. It's the World Transplant Olympic Games, which is part of the Olympic umbrella of organizations. 4 years ago, I had a liver transplant from just some congenital problems, and had heard about the World Games. So I competed a year ago. 2 years ago, I competed in the US Games, won a bunch of gold medals in swimming and one in bike racing. And then I went to the World Games, and it was a very cool event. There were about 2,500 athletes from around the world, 50 countries. As I said, I was part of Team USA. So I entered 5 swim races and got 5 gold medals and 5 world records. So, it's a pretty good, I guess, pretty good, statement as far as, what organ transplants can do to get you back to health. So that's kind of my story. I'm still swimming, and I'm leaving here in a couple of weeks to go back and ski for the winter.
Sounds like a good life for now. Well, thank you. And thank you for everybody for giving us the update. And so at this point, we kind of want to start to, and I think we've already kind of begun to venture down the road of looking back. And so one of the first questions that we have for everybody, and similar for the other one, we'll just kind of work our way around the screen on this one because we want to hear from everybody, is, what was your path to Bucknell? Some of you perhaps were recruited. Some of you might have already been at Bucknell and just were able to become part of the swimming and diving program. Recruiting is something that has changed. In my 15 years at Bucknell, it seems to get earlier and earlier when you start it. And as we were talking about before we started recording, in the last 6 to 9 months, it has become far more virtual than it used to be, with the inability to do some of the things in person we would typically do. But what was your process of coming to Bucknell, your college search process, which outside of recruiting, even the college search process has changed a lot in the time up till now. And so I just share with us kind of how you found Bucknell and what ultimately led you to decide to come to Bucknell. And so once again, we'll start with Bob Bice.
It's a good question. I went to Bucknell for an engineering degree. My freshman year, there was no pool. The pool was built that year, and in the beginning of my sophomore year, Bob Latour invited anybody who wanted to try out for the team to go ahead and do that. I had never swum competitively, and although I like to swim, and so I went out basically to enjoy two weeks worth of swimming, and then I could go back to studying again. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, I made the team. And Bob taught me how to swim butterfly. He taught me backstroke. It was an amazing process, and I really enjoyed it. Liked Bob Latour. He's a great guy, and taught me everything really I knew about swimming. The first meet I ever swam in was at Bucknell. So I was part of I'm not a good swimmer, in light of Bill Deerstein. He was there when I was there. He was a freshman, and he could swim circles around me. I don't know whether he can still do that or not, but we had a
I'm
good
prepared
time.
to try.
Broke all your records.
Yeah, all my records were broken by you, Bill. They didn't last long.
All right, well, thank you. Stu, what was your path to Bucknell?
Well, I was 16 and Bucknell admitted me at that age, let me go there. Wasn't suggesting I go to a prep school or this, since I was out of a very large Brooklyn high school where I was a sort of swimmer. I came to Bucknell and was on the first event, first team. I think it was against Lock Haven. And just like my computer skills, which have me faceless, I sort of was taken over by some of the really good swimmers that Bucknell grew. And Bob Latour was very, very nice. He was helpful. I enjoyed my many, many years there. I had taught swimming my whole life with children's camps, and I was a lifeguard as well. So swimming was something I did. I don't do that much of it anymore, but I do stay active, and I do love to sail, and I sailed and raced many years, and I practiced law full time. I went on to graduate school at law schools and what have you. So enough said. Bucknell is in my blood, and I do everything I can to support it as best I can. And it's just lucky to be with everybody. We had this great event a few years ago where we all got together and celebrated the first team and what have you. So it's really been an important part of my life, and I thank you for doing this.
Thank you. And so continuing, just hearing the stories of how we got to Bucknell, and it's great to hear, for Kevin, what and his teammates, what the path is very different. To be at school when the pool opens is definitely a different experience. And so continuing the conversation, Bob Erdahl, can you share with us what your journey was to Bucknell?
Well, yes, I arrived in about 1956, and the pool was rather new, and Bob Latour had recently arrived. I can't remember whether he arrived the same year as me or the year before, something like that. And I swam a little bit club swimming in Washington, D.C., and but not much. And then the pool was quite new, quite nice, and I jumped in and swam around quite a bit. And then Latour somehow visited the pool when I was in the pool, and he invited me to join the swimming team. So that's what I did. And so that was my stint with my main involvement in swimming competitively. And it was just an extremely enjoyable experience. And then 2 years after me came Bill Deerstein and Chuck Montz and several others. And then the team built strength very quickly in those years. And so I was lucky to be on that championship team in 1960, basically. And then my contact with swimming I've swum quite a bit since that team, but it was very casual. It was sort of working out conditioning and stuff like this. And it was my involvement in the pool from Bucknell that led to that, which was kept me in very good health. I was sort of my career just sort of swallowed me up after I got started, and I didn't. So most of my athletics were in sailing. Oh well, I can say I had a very convenient location. In Kingston, Ontario. People don't know much about it. It's a small town, but I would say it was. It had some fame. It had the locomotive works that was the biggest in the British Empire in 1880. So it was a huge locomotive works that built all these enormous locomotives that go across Canada and across the Rocky Mountains. So that was one point of fame. And in sailing, it was also built a great battleship during the War of 1812, which was the biggest battleship at the time. It was 200 feet with 3 gun decks, and it was bigger than Lord Nelson's battleship Victory at the Battle of Trafalgar. So there were certain moments where Kingston came to the fore. Anyway, so I did casual swimming, and also I sailed quite a bit, sailed more competitively, and I did competitive swimming after I graduated. So so that's it. My career was as a professor of mathematics, and I still am intensely involved in mathematical research. So that is ongoing and very absorbs a lot of my time right now. Okay, well, I just enjoyed this more or less a start of my adult career at Bucknell University, and it was just great.
Thank you. And Bill, you had mentioned obviously having a previous connection with Coach Latour from Albany Academy. Is that what kind of primarily brought you to Bucknell, or were there other things that drew you?
Well, that was that was the first step in my Bucknell connection. The second step was I went to a boys' camp up in Maine for 10 years, and Bob was the waterfront director up there. So I swam at the academy, and then in the summers I went up to Maine, and the camp was on a lake, and I can well remember most mornings before reveille, getting up and walking down to the lake with Bob, and he would get in a rowboat, and I'd swim out in the middle of the lake, and he'd be there next to me in the rowboat and swim back. And that's really how I came to Bucknell. He showed tremendous interest and support, which really touched me for my whole life. After Bucknell, I went on to serve in the Army, compliments of ROTC. I was stationed in Germany for 22 months, and that's the root of how I got to Austria, how it all started. And I spent my career first with Gillette, working in Latin America and then in the Philippines, and then was recruited by J&J in Singapore and spent 26 years with them in Asia and in the headquarters in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I've had a terrific career. Very grateful for the foundation stones that were put down in Lewisburg. Fair to say, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way, if it wasn't for those foundation stones in the wonderful Freeze Rook pool and on campus, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's been a great ride, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for everything Bucknell did for me and for all the great people that I met there, some of whom are on the call tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim, what was your path, Jim Smiggy? Your path to Bucknell, what drew you?
Yeah, I was the Connecticut State High School swimming champion. I was from Stamford High, and one of my coaches knew Bucknell and knew Bob Latour, and she pointed me in his direction, and then Bob started to recruit me, and I went up to Bucknell, and I had an opportunity to visit Bill Deerstein and Bill Dorr, and had them show me around, and I applied for early admissions, and that was it.
Rest is history, as they say.
Right.
Thanks, Jim. Jerry, Thimme, what was your path?
I'm really not sure, but I'm sure what I am sure is it came down to Bob Latour. Swimming was not an afterthought for me, but I played baseball, basketball, football, captained all those teams at a small high school, swam in the summer. I did well, but I don't know how Bob found me, but he did. I had two schools that approached me, but once I got to Bucknell, it was all over. It's just a very special place. And I think you could, Bob Latour and Brandon Tufts were pretty innovative in their time. I still remember stories of them driving long hours to scout out our competition, and Bob had always had an insight that was useful, or in some cases manipulative, and would convince you could do things that you weren't quite sure you could do. I still remember in the 1964 NCAA championship, I had never swum the 1650, and he wraps his arm around me and says, "See that fellow over there? Well, he's the New England 1650 champ." So he says, "You're a better sprinter than him, so just stick with him and outsprint him." Now, I got the outsprint him part. It was the 64 laps sticking with part that I didn't get. But with good fortune was able to stick with them, and a testament to Bob more than my skills. He saw something that might be able to put to good effect, but he did so many innovative things, and now it is so technology driven, and Dan, I think it's a full-time job. But back there, he and Brad and others spent a lot of time helping us be prepared for the swimming that we were, but somehow he found me out. And like I said, once I got to Bucknell, there was no question about my decision.
Great. And then again, rounding us out, Dave, if you could describe how you found Bucknell and chose it.
Well, so I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was a swimmer and all. And I wanted to swim in college, and I was looking to get out of state and looking eastward. I think the way I found Bucknell was probably through the recognition of Jim and Jerry and Bill and you guys having some success in '64. So I approached Bucknell. I looked at a bunch of schools to apply to and to try to swim at. And so I showed up at Bucknell, met with Bob Latour. I probably met with Jim and Jerry as well. I just, the way that recruiting worked in those days, I don't remember that, but I ended up applying for early admission, got in, went there, and Jim was those days we had a freshman team. Jim was my coach, and Jerry was one of the big guys.
That's great, thank you. And so kind of for the next several questions, we're going to move away from kind of the around the horn format and just kind of throw it out to the group to share memories as we go. At this point, I'm actually going to introduce or reintroduce, I know Todd did at the top, but Kevin Flynn is our student athlete that's joining us. Kevin is a mathematical economics. Did I get that right, Kevin? Mathematical economics major. He has been a captain for us both as a junior and then this year as a senior, and has done a great job of staying positive and keeping his teammates positive as we navigate through this unique semester. But I know he's got a question for all of you to kind of provide insights on. So I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your guys' day and your personal lives for joining us today. It's an honor, a real honor for me to be here and meet people from where it all began. So that's kind of cool. Just like being the voice of kind of like the team for this call here, just one thing that comes to mind is honestly, we're always looking for advice and we're looking to see how we can grow as athletes or people. And I'm curious to hear what some of your thoughts are of giving advice to either me or some other swimmers that are, on the swimming and diving team, whether it's about the team, Bucknell in general, or just advice that some advice that you guys have experienced that either I could take away or give to other members of the team.
My advice is to take all the years you've already invested in the pool and continue to invest them forever in general fitness. I don't think it makes any difference what you do, whether you swim or you jog or play tennis or golf, but stay fit. That's certainly helped me, perhaps more than anything else, to be where I am today. I consider myself to be in pretty good health, but it's only because most days around 5 o'clock, I'm doing some sort of exercise and have for my entire life. And, you know what it's like. You've done it for the first 19 years of your life. Carry on.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because you'd be surprised sometimes when we are out of season in the spring, you'd see some athletes just looking to just take a mental break or physical break from swimming. But I know, at least for me, doing some sort of exercise, whether it's even getting away from the pool to shoot some hoops or go for a little walk or a run, makes me feel better too. So it's good to hear from someone like you, Mr. Deerstein.
I think another.
Bill, I can't emphasize enough that you need to stay fit. I haven't been swimming since I graduated from Bucknell, except, we go to the beach or something. But I've always run before going to work all these years. I retired, I play golf, I play tennis and work out, although I can't do that right now because of the virus going around, and I'm, in that age group that's very vulnerable. So my wife, keeps me, but we do a lot of walking. We walk 4, 5, 6 miles a day up in the mountains. Stay fit. Helps you mentally.
Yeah. Kevin, I was just going to respond to a question I think was embedded in your opening statement about giving advice. Just from my standpoint, I'd say there's 2 points there. One is at this stage in life, you can probably lead by example, what you do and the way you act. And that came back to me in several points at the 40th reunion, things that I didn't even think about, but apparently had a positive effect on people. So just be the best person you can be, and that certainly would include being fit. The other part is probably a little more sensitive, or at least you have to be careful about, is giving specific advice. There are times during everybody's college career when they need help. Hopefully you'll be able to recognize that and they'll be receptive. But if they're not, there's not much you can do about it. But so there, I think you have to pick your spots. But there will be people who will look to you for advice or help, and you want to be there and be careful how you proceed. But you may be surprised at the impact it has.
I appreciate that coming from you. Yeah, I think an example is something that we stressed I live with two other captains on the team as well, and that's something we've stressed to even the junior class at this moment in time, that an example is a really good image to have and set, even for the younger kids, the first years and the sophomores. So thank you.
Yes.
I got a
Oh,
couple
excuse
of
me.
things to say. I'd like to follow up on Jerry, the leadership thing. And Kevin, it sounds like you're one of the leaders. Yeah, I think you'll find that your employers in the future will recognize that leadership skill, and it'll go far for you. And the other thing that I found, just looking back on it at the time, I think when you're in college, you don't focus on this, but the discipline of keeping your head in the water and following the lane and doing, many thousands of yards of workouts, that discipline carries through. And you'll find that throughout your whole life.
That's absolutely correct, Dave. Discipline is the backbone of success, in my opinion.
Yes,
And
I can.
we all learned that in the pool.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, certainly we did. And I have, I agree with all this advice about staying fit. It's just wonderful. In Kingston, I was my office was 5 minutes walk to the gym, where I went and played squash quite a bit, and then I was also 5 minutes walk from the yacht club, where I went and sailed in a lot of sailboat races. So this was just a wonderful aspect. And also, I'm glad to see, Kevin, that you're in mathematical economics. What a wonderful topic to be involved in. And I can see from the look on your face, you're just enjoying that topic. And that's another thing about a career, to choose something that you can't do without, that you just love doing. And that is a great formula for having a successful career. And also, you love doing it. You love mentoring other people in the same direction and enjoy teaching them. This is just a wonderful direction to take and way to enjoy every minute of your life.
Yep. Everybody has pretty much covered the field. Only one thing I just want to add, which is a little different, is a smile goes a long way.
It's true.
That's right.
Well, I really appreciate all the advice coming from all of you gentlemen today, and I will make that known to members of the team. I'm gonna pass it back over to Dan to keep going, to mention some more topics on the agenda for this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. And so kind of building forward, and we have so many memories and things to share, but we also have a finite window of time. And so I wanted to get to what I think is an important question, probably more that Kevin can take to the team as well as personally, as well as when we post this for everybody. What are either experiences or skills that you learned from your time at Bucknell that you really felt you carried forward into your successful professional careers? What were the things that, Bill Deerstein said it was the foundation. What were those experiences and skills that really have been carried forward for you to be the successes that you are now?
That's a tough question to ask and or to answer. What I think almost more than anything else was a self-reliance. You get to Bucknell and there are some really smart people and talented people, and you need to sort of find your own voice and your own direction. And so you need to rely on yourself, and you find some people do things a lot better than you, but there's a great book describes intelligence in sort of 7 different ways, much more than just taking tests and being successful. Just, there's a variety of them. you will find a way that you can distinguish yourself. And that self-reliance, along with a lot of discipline and hard work, goes a long way, not only at Bucknell and in swimming and studies, but also in your career.
I think one of the things you probably already learned by now from the swimming that you really want to take forward is never give up. You're gonna be in situations where they're going to be very uncomfortable, or where you've got a lot of roadblocks or whatever it is, but you just got to power forward. Don't give up.
I'll follow Jim on that. It's I'd use the word endurance and goal oriented. I mean, swimming's about goal orientation, right? Things stay with you.
I think as we kind of get to the tail end, I have one more question, and we'll make this, I think, the final question. When you look back, it's come up, the benefit of the influence of a man like Bob Latour, or perhaps another teammate. Who was the person from your time at Bucknell that had the biggest impact on you, whether it was a teammate, a coach, or perhaps somebody even outside of the athletic arena? Who had the biggest impact on you, and why, in your time at Bucknell?
I think Bob Latour, taught me, a non-swimmer, to swim. And he just raised the bar, kept raising the bar for me. And and it helped me realize that if the bar keeps raising, you can keep going with it. And it gave me confidence to, in a lot of things post Bucknell.
It's a Stuart. I'm not sure if I'm still on. I can't see anybody, but if you can hear me, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, Stu. Keep talking.
Brief. Thank you. I'll be brief. I had the privilege of talking at graduation at one point. And what I told the student body was, when you leave this place, you're going to be in situations where you think you can't accomplish it, and you'll be amazed at what you're going to be able to accomplish. And I still feel that way, that there is a learning process at Bucknell, wherever it comes from, because my background, I'm sure, was very different than many of you. And you come away with just something that you can't put your finger on, whether it's with the swimming or whether it's whatever, that just stands you in better stead. And like Bill, I served in the Army, I was in the police, I was in Germany. All these things started with things at Bucknell, ROTC, and whatever. So I think there's been very good questions and answers, but I think the Bucknell spirit and what goes on there is sort of unique. And I think we're all blessed to have been there and what we get out of it. And maybe some of you can define it a little bit better, but I just think there is just a general thing. And somebody said, smile. That's great advice, and confidence in yourself. And, there's always going to be a kick in the ass, pardon me, but you learned it in swimming, you learned it in everything else. So anyway, thank you all.
So I have a question of all you guys. This is when the question about who was influential on me on the Bob Latour story. One thing that I never have forgotten is Bob Latour used to put these, what I thought were kind of dopey little phrases on the wall all the time. Did all you guys experience this?
And when the tough get going, yeah, we heard them all.
We heard them all. And the only one I remember was luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I've thought about that one over the years. But I remember walking around as a sophomore, or junior, or senior, these sayings on the wall. I can't remember any of them. I just thought, well, this is a little, you just ignore them and they're a little bit dopey, but I guess they're not. I remember them.
How about the wheat germ?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, in addition to Bob Latour and Kevin, this is a lesson for you. Two of the people on this call had an impact on me, and that's Jim Smiggy and Bill Deerstein. And, I don't know exactly how they went about it, but you knew that they were available to you, and just assuming that responsibility and knowing it was available makes a big difference. So what you're doing and trying to do is the key here, and you'll find a way to make it work.
Can I tell a story?
Please.
For those of you who remember, a good friend of mine and one that I'm still in touch with is Bruce Dove. Bruce Dove was a basketball player, never swam at all, but he had got a bad knee, and so he came to Bucknell, and he asked, Coach, can I try to swim? And so Bob nurtured him and let him on the team. Of course, he did anchor an NCAA championship relay. Well, I don't know that he anchored it, but he certainly was on it in 1964. So he was very successful. Now there's a story. We're up in Cornell, and we're in the locker room, and Bruce Dove goes up to Bob and he said, Bob, you see that guy over there? He said, that's Jim Nance. He was the national heavyweight wrestling champion for the college. And he's also a great football player. And Bob turns to Bruce and says, hey, Bruce, I was just talking to him. And he said, hey, look at that fellow over there. He said, that's Bruce Dove. And Bruce just looked at him and, Coach.
Well, I know we are kind of getting to the end. I think we're actually a little bit over, but it's certainly worth spending extra time. It's been great hearing the stories and the memories. As we've done this, certainly we've heard some things that have changed. The recruiting process has changed. The swimsuit technology has changed. But some of the things that certainly have not changed, whether you are on the first team at Bucknell or on the current team at Bucknell, is the lessons that you get out of the sport, the relationships and the importance of team and teammates, and certainly the dramatic impact that 4 years at Bucknell can have on a person's life. And so thank you all again for taking the time to be here. I don't want to speak for Kevin, but I know he is grateful for all the insight as well. And so it's a special opportunity for both of us, and thank you. And at that point, I'm going to kick it back over to Todd.
Thanks, Coach. And I'm going to turn my attention right away to Kevin. And Kevin, thank you again for taking the time out today. Wish you the best of luck with what's only a couple weeks left of this semester. It seems like it's flown by. And then also keep our fingers crossed that you're going to be in that natatorium behind me, swimming competitively in the not too distant future. We're all keeping our fingers crossed that you're going to be able to compete. And if that does come to fruition, we will obviously be cheering you on and wishing you the best of luck. So again, thank you. And to the alums on the call, thanks so much. First of all, for joining. Secondly, for what you did as members of the swimming and diving program, the true pioneers that started the program that has evolved to what it is today. The aquatics program as a whole is a special family. And we have definitely seen that throughout these calls, and the support that the alumni gives the current program is second to none. And without it, quite frankly, we are not able to do what we can do for our current student athletes. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say a special thank you to Bill and Taki Deerstein for all that you've done for the aquatics program. and the endowment and what you've done in that area. We did the same thing last night with the 70s group, Dan and Chris Richards, who have on the water polo side done some really special things as well. And those are just certain examples of the entire community that we have here in aquatics. So thank you guys all for what you do and what you will continue to do for Bucknell Swimming and Diving. And then for those of you that tuned in to watch tonight, thank you for doing so, and go Bison.